Welcome. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance of the United States. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next, we'll take up the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and acted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless otherwise noted. Is there anything that needs to be removed or changed?
Madam President, I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the regular agenda. Our first item is Resolution 2298, which is a vacation and exchange of public right-of-way. It is a public hearing, so I will open the hearing and we'll begin with the staff presentation. Mr. Serdar.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for ACHD. This is a decision briefing and public hearing on a right-of-way vacation. ACHD has received a vacation request from Michael D. Wardle on behalf of the Tomlinson Family Trust in September of 2019. The area being vacated is 2.193 acres, and the area being dedicated is 3.862 acres. This vacation is a vacation in exchange that is required as part of a plat approval that took place on April 10th, 2019. Mindy Wallace is going to give a brief recap of that approval hearing.
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Mindy Wallace, Development Services. As you may recall, on April 10, 2019, you heard and approved a preliminary plat application for POLLARD subdivision. As part of that application, the applicant proposed to vacate existing right-of-way for the north portion of Levi Lane and the east-west portion of Pollard Lane to allow for the construction of a new collector roadway at Waverton Drive. The history of the existing right-of-way and how it relates to the vacation is a little unique, so I just wanted to provide you a brief recap. As part of ITD State Highway 16 Extension Project, a series of local roads and right-of-ways were constructed or established by ITD. Specific to the Pollard Lane subdivision, ITD eliminated the Pollard Lane intersection with Chinden Boulevard in this location. Due to its proximity to State Highway 16, and obtained a new right-of-way running Levi Lane running north-south and Pollard Lane running east-west to connect Chinden Boulevard to Pollard Lane. ITD purchased the right-of-way from the property owner and compensated the applicant for the construction of a roadway with the intent that ITD would dedicate the right-of-way to ACHD when the roads were complete. Prior to constructing the roadways, the applicant requested to ITD to relocate the right-of-way and construct the roadway south of the original alignment. Prior to ACHD's acceptance of the roads, ITD was to confirm that the proposed right-of-way dedication was where the new road had been constructed. Subsequently, it was determined that the right-of-way dedicated to ACHD by ITD was not where the road had been constructed, so the road is not constructed in the existing right-of-way. The applicant proposed to relocate Levi Lane and Pollard Lane in exchange for new right-of-way for a new collector roadway, Waverton Drive, and that is the alignment shown in red. During the April 10th commission hearing, the commission heard testimony against the proposed relocation of the roadways from an adjacent property owner, Franklin Sensor. After hearing testimony, the commission voted to approve the preliminary plat and layout of the Pollard Lane subdivision, which included conditions requiring the vacation exchange of right-of-way to allow for the relocation of Levi and Pollard Lanes as proposed by the applicant, noting that the Franklin Sensor site would still have public street access to Chinden Boulevard. The roadway vacation exchange and the realignment of the roadways was further memorialized by the Meridian City Council's approval of this preliminary plat on May 21st, 2019. And with that, I'll turn this back over to Dave.
Madam President, Commissioners, this site map depicts the vacation and exchange area. The vacation is in green, and the exchange piece is in red. After publication of the staff report, ACHD staff did receive comments from Franklin Sensors in person that they were opposed to the vacation and that we're requesting the road stay in the current location. Consistent with the approval of the plat on April 10th, 2019, it is staff recommendation for resolution number 2298 to be approved as applicant has completed all staff requirements. Remain standing for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Serdar. Are there questions or comments? No, hearing none. We'll hear from the applicant next.
Thank you.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, I will. Mike Wardle, Brighton Corporation, 2929 West Navigator, Meridian, Idaho, 83642. Madam President, Commission members, I don't really have any details to add other than to affirm your approval on April 10th, 2 Planning and Zoning Commission reviews, and a recommendation forwarded to the Meridian City Council on April 18th, approving or recommending approval of the Pollard subdivision. And then the final action by the City Council on May 21st of this year to approve the subdivision as proposed, including what we refer to as the Levi to Pollard connection. They've adopted and recorded the development agreement that completed the entitlements process on July 10th. Thus, as noted by staff through that hearing process, both here and with the city, the realignment as requested is proposed to go forward early next year as we commence development of that area. And request that your action today by noting this vacation and exchange of the right-of-way will enable us to proceed. We request your approval as recommended by staff and would answer your questions if you have them.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Wardle? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we do have some folks who have signed up to address this item, so we'll invite them to come up one at a time, and then if there's someone else who didn't sign up, we'll give you an opportunity as well. So the first one who has signed up is David, looks like Doro. Didn't butcher it too much. Please state your name and address for the record.
David DeRoe, 6675 North Pollard Lane, Meridian, Idaho. Is it possible to have, are we holding close to the timer? If I might go a little over, is that okay?
Well, let's try to keep it within the time frame.
Okay. Okay. Can I borrow time from someone else? Is that a possibility, or is it? I want to be respectful of your time, but 3 minutes. If I had a few more, it might help. Just to clarify.
Why don't
Well,
you
just-
begin and then we'll go.
Okay.
We'll begin the timer now.
We're going to be.
Reassess.
Okay. This is our kind of our vision for our company is we wanted to build an upscale complex, an upscale place where a business park. That's kind of a map of what we platted. This is our building right here. What we built to be an upscale building. It'll be nice. That's our vision for what we're doing. One issue that we had when we got our building is there was the right of way was when we bought the land. The yellow line there was where the right of way was supposed to be. And before it got built, it got changed 3 times. We went back through zoning 3 times because we really wanted it to be done right. And we know that every real estate project, you want to have a nice entrance. Everything that Brighton does, they put a nice entrance on it. We want to do the same. We know that you get the most value out of a real estate project when you put a nice entrance on it. And if you don't, then it makes it less attractive, it makes it less. So we actually went through zoning 3 times, and as the roads, as Brighton had different plans for the roadways, because we really wanted it to be lined up and done right. And that was all within the contract. They had a contract with ITD, and they had until the end of 2016 to actually finalize the location of the road. And they did it right at the end of 2016, and actually we built our building shortly after that, once we knew the road was going to be permanent. This was the plan that was submitted by Brighton shortly before the road was built, that shows the right-of-way, the upper sort of road there, and the road right below it is actually where it got built. And this is the request that they submitted to ITD to what the plan was. You can see there's a vacation there, and then the right-of-way was supposed to be correctly recorded in the new locations. This is all what the plan was. This is all the information that we had, what was going to happen. Go. And then, of course, as was just summarized, this is like the new plan. This is kind of showing, overlaying what the plan was in the new plan. So we basically built our building very carefully to line with the road, and now there's a request to shift it. I know it's brought up the April 10th hearing is kind of a precedent for this hearing. That was a hearing to approve the plat. This is a hearing to obviously to talk about the vacation. I hope we look at those as separate issues, not trying to, because it was intended to be a separate issue. But it was brought up many times in the hearing that this is interim road, temporary road. I didn't count how many times. It's like many times in the hearing. And if I was you and I had heard that, I would have voted exactly the way that April 10th. It was voted on April 10th. It's an interim road. It should be. There's no reason. It was always intended to be an interim road. That's the dialogue that happened in the meeting. And a lot of that happens when we're done and during the rebuttal and whatnot. We can't say anything. But that was the communication that happened many times. We asked to appeal it, but we were a day late to appeal that hearing. But like I said, the contract gave them rights to move that road through the end of 2016. Then it had to be built, and it got transferred to ACHD. And then after that, there's no discussion about anything that road ever moving. That's the way the contract was set up. That's the way when we had access to that. This is all the communication about the permanent nature of Pollard Lane. There were many emails about Pollard Lane before, all the communication and email communication about what was going to happen. It was going to be built to ACHD standards. It'd be approval. The ACHD approved the road location. There were emails after the fact. A very explicit email said this is a public road. There's indirect communication. The contract that I just referred to is that they had till the end of 2016 to build that road, and then put there's green signs, which mean public road. There's speed sign on there, put up ACHD. Like I said, the 3 times we went back through the further realignment, there was no ever communication. Brian was very specific. We need to realign this. There was never like, this is gonna be a temporary road. There was never that this is gonna be temporary. They were very adamant about getting the road exactly where it needed to be, because it was gonna be a permanent road. There was a neighbor that wanted an extra stop sign. ACHD accepted it as their road, went out and put an extra stop sign. It wasn't a temporary road. Brighton called it, in their emails, they called it a permanent road. There's no communication to the contrary. Everything was a permanent road after the end of 2016. And there's a couple of legal issues here as well. I was talking to our lawyer about this, and I wish he could have been here. But they're basically, the case they're making is that there's a typo in the contract. This thing got misrecorded. All the intent was to record this properly, but somehow there's a typo, and typos don't invalidate contracts. Our attorney thinks it's a very strong case for saying that yes, Pollard Lane, that needs to be properly recorded as was intended. Just because of a typo doesn't invalidate a contract. There's a very strong case I'm hearing to say that there really should be a different process. We should this should go through a process of vacating a road, not necessarily moving it right away, which holds a higher standard and would protect us, and I think is the right way to do it. And our lawyer said we have a very strong case on that point, because the contract was fully complied with. Everything was done. The intent was to record it properly. They got paid for it. They built it properly. Everything in the contract was complied with properly, except for a little typo of recording it wrong. So, and there's a second legal issue too, and that is that ACHD told us many times, directly, emails, that this is a public road. All the communication was that it was a public road. We relied on that, and we acted accordingly, and there's a loss to us if that gets shifted, because we did have that communication for ACHD. So I'm trying to keep it short. That's in my presentation. I'll take questions.
All right, thank you. Are there questions?
I just have a question, Madam President and Mr. Duro. So subsequent to the ACHD's review of this back in April, this went before the city of Meridian, and they evaluated, because they have the authority under the land use, their land use authority, they're the general purpose government. And how was this raised then? Because it obviously affects the use of your property, you perceive that to be, and it's about the use of this property and this not being a land use agency. How were these addressed and resolved, or not resolved, or appealed or not appealed in the city of Meridian?
Right. There were two responses in the sort of that the commissioners had. One is this: they kind of said roads aren't our authority. That's ACHD. They kind of wrote it off that way. The zoning looks right to us. This is the right use of the design, but roads are not my priority. There's another group that kind of said that, well, there was communication that Brighton made a very strong, I would say, promise to provide us an alternate road. I think they chose the words very carefully to not say that, but it certainly was interpreted that they were going to provide us with an alternate road. It wouldn't be an HDSD road, but they would give us access across a private road. And that was satisfying to a lot of them. That we've never got any, that was something that was said, this is in the works, this is happening. There was nothing actually, there was communication, but they never made a single proposal to us. This is what we're going to do for you in exchange after they got their approval. So there was, yeah, they were kind of satisfied, I say, because there was this alternate road that kept being discussed. That they brought up in the meeting. And this is all in the rebuttal period when we can't say anything, but they kind of alluded to the fact there would be this alternate road they were going to do for us. But we don't have any contract, there's no guarantee that'll ever happen.
And just to follow up, this was during this P&Z hearings, public
Right.
hearings process,
Exactly.
and the city council has approved the P&Z's
Right.
determination. Okay, thank you.
Madam President?
Yes, Commissioner Baker?
David, could you put up the map of the project?
I'm sorry.
Because I do recall this quite explicitly. I recall the same arguments that you made back then as well.
Were you at the P&Z hearing?
No, this was
Okay.
this was at our hearing,
Okay.
okay? Which I.
Yeah, there was talk about that alternate road here, but we never have.
Well, no, the actual, right here. So, Mr. Giroux, you still have access to a public road.
Right.
You just don't have that straight shot you thought you had.
Right.
But you also, on a one that you showed us on yours, showed us the layout of the whole project. You wanted to have it very nicely done. You had buildings throughout, and you had other accesses off of Pollard into your property.
Right.
So your main entrance, actually, I think you showed 3 entrances. Two? Okay, so one to the north, one to right across from your existing building, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're all onto public roads,
Right.
right? So you haven't lost access to your property.
Right.
You just have lost access the way you envisioned it.
Right. And
Across somebody else's property.
Right.
Right. So when you talked about ITD having control, ITD only worked with the property owner to provide access to Pollard Lane so that you would not be landlocked. So that's what they did with the property owner that Brighton now controls.
Mm-hmm.
But you haven't lost access to a public street.
Right.
Okay. I just want to, okay, but you
I can
acknowledge that.
clarify.
Well, no, you acknowledge that you
Okay,
haven't
yeah.
lost access, because your whole argument is you've lost access to a private street or a public street, which you haven't. You've just lost it in the configuration you wanted.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And every real estate project likes to have a nice entrance. I mean.
Right, and you can still have a nice entrance. It's just not a straight shot from whatever the name of whatever that street is. It's that Levi or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That you.
Not as nice an entrance.
Well, you could. The entrance is on your property. You can make it as fancy or as unfancy as you want, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The access affects. I mean, I would argue the access affects it. Maybe you would argue not. So.
How would the access, you can't build on a private road, a public road.
But yeah, I would say the approach to it affects the perception as you're approaching it, and if you're, you know, if it doesn't end up being something to drive clear around and.
Okay, well, then you do that, you could do a nice entrance there, but you also have another entrance where the red line goes in, that could be, I mean, anyway, thank you, I just, okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you. And then it looks like Michelle Duro would like to testify as well. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Michelle Duro. I'm also a co-owner with David, and my address is 3044 West Sugarberry Drive, Eagle, Idaho 83616. And so I just wanted to express, I think today we wanted to come before you, and I know you guys are, you know, doing your very best to figure out what's the fair thing to do here. We're not trying to appeal the other hearing. That time has passed. We understand we are not trying to take any legal rights that we don't have. What we are requesting now is, and we do understand we will have access through a new public road they want to build. But what we're saying is the legal process should be, when a public road is removed, that there's a special hearing for that, because this will impact us financially. We kind of compare it to like if we were a large nursery and somebody ripped out one rose bush, it wouldn't affect us. But if we only have one rose bush, in order to build a really nice entrance and all those other buildings, we have to earn a lot more money. We're not big, we're really small. We're actually not really a developer. We have one piece of land that we're like, maybe we will be able to develop eventually as our company, our one company, and the one building we have there continues to earn money. But that's going to take us a while to earn enough money to do that, as opposed to our neighbors who have money to build this tomorrow, probably. I mean, they might, maybe they don't, but they have done hundreds of projects. This is a special project for them too. All projects are special, but for us, it's our only project. So, but we don't think we should have more favoritism than them. We understand that there's a road across the property, but it was represented by all parties involved, including the other developer, to be a public road, and we built around that. We will lose property value, and it will be years and years before we could get to that point, and we'll have to go through approvals. We don't know if that will happen. We don't know if that will, you know, we hope that will happen. We're working hard. Our business is successful. Because we have lots of our employees who came to support us because they like working for us. We're trying to provide something for the community, and we're hoping that we're going to do our very best to try to continue that. But we just, as part of, you know, like when we pledge allegiance, it's liberty to all. It's equal for all. And our equal for all is that the process would be, so we're not appealing the other thing, that's done, but the process, it should have been recorded as a public road. The process would be, we're vacating a public road, not just the right of way. And that in that case, we assess what damage it does to us, because we don't have $10 million to go and just build a whole bunch of buildings right now. And to modify the road, that part of the plan I think requires us to modify the road and things like that. We don't know if we'll get a southern access. That hasn't been guaranteed in any of the meetings, and all the decisions have been made based on the decisions of others. So that's what we're asking for, and then so that it can be equitable for us. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for her? No? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person who has signed up is Karen Garcia. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Karen Garcia, 6675 North Pollard Lane in Meridian. Madam President, Commissioners, I'll be very brief. I'll just echo what David and Michelle have said. I think really the point I want to bring up is that in our efforts to build our building, we did everything that we felt we could in order to have it done right. Obviously, as we went through planning and zoning 3 times, we showed our good intent and our understanding of, you know, what we wanted to be an asset to our company as well as to the community. And I think we show our good intent and our good faith of where the road was going to be. And David brought out some evidences as well. that never caused us to believe anything different. Again, and just echoing what Michelle said, this is our only project. This is very important to us. We love development. We're in support of development. It's that access, the direct access, that is important to us. And there's lots of different ways that area can be configured. We are built. We can't move. We can't change where we are. So thank you.
Okay, are there questions? No? All right, thank you. All right, the last person who indicated a desire to testify is Keith McGregor. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Keith McGregor. I work at 6675 North Pollard Lane. Sorry about that. Just want to reiterate that the property could be used just about any way possible, and we already built with our nice entrance, so there is cost to us to redo entrances. We design the land as it is for this entrance. So in order to put up new buildings, there's obviously cost. It's going to be hard to make it look as good or as appealing. So we do feel there's a cost, and we do feel like our neighbor developer could rearrange just slightly to make things work with the road where it is. Thank you.
Questions? No?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, no one else has indicated they wanted to testify on this matter, but if there is someone who would like to, we'd invite you to do that at this time. Yes, come on up and please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jacob Barrett. My address is 6111 Post Street in Boise, Idaho. Commissioners, just the one thing that I see in this application that seems to raise a legal question in my mind is why the vacation and right-of-way is not to dedicate the current public road as it already is. Since the road already exists there, it seems that the right-of-way vacation and dedication should be for that location prior to any application for changing around the roadways because of that mistake that was made in the previous process. So seems like we're kind of skipping over a step in the process here that is an important step. So.
Okay, are there questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address this item? Okay, seeing no volunteers, we'll have a few minutes for rebuttal from the applicant and then staff comments if appropriate.
Madam President, members of the Commission, David Turnbull, Brighton Corporation, 2929 West Navigator and Meridian. I don't think it's necessary for me to stand up here and rebut a lot of the testimony that's been given. We went through all of this back in April. The issues haven't changed. Your staff has done a very nice job of making sure all of the boxes were checked. I would just indicate that, again, I think as has been said previously by members of the commission and also members of the city, Franklin Sensor came out here in unincorporated land, no utilities, built a building. We, through the dedication process, through the ITD right-of-way acquisition process where they needed to shut down access to Pollard Lane, arranged for a right-of-way to be built through, I should note that this is my partner's property who passed away in February, but I am the trustee of his estate, so I'm here representing him in that capacity, and we will be the developers of the property. They went out there and built before we had any opportunity or chance to ascertain what the market was for our property, what the design or the users would be for our property, before any traffic studies were done. Once all of those things were in place, it became very clear working with your staff, with the traffic analysts, that this is the appropriate alignment for this public right-of-way. This decision was already made. This is just the technical process of making the right-of-way exchange and vacations. So we would ask for your confirmation of that with your vote. Appreciate it, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there
I have one
questions, Mr.
question.
Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. So is the road in red going to be dedicated right-of-way to Ada County Highway District?
Yes.
It will be a public road.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank
No?
you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments from staff? No? Okay. And commissioners, do you have any further questions for staff?
No questions.
No? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and this matter is before you for action.
Madam President, with Franklin Sensor still having the access there, and this has already been before us in the staff's report and recommendations, I don't see anything compelling to make us forward with the approval. So with that being said, I would move that we approve resolution number 2298, vacation exchange of public right-of-way at West Agnew Drive and North Levi Avenue for Tomlinson Family Trust.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Madam President, I'll be voting for the motion. This just indicates the cost and consequences of having two different agencies. The city planning and zoning or county planning and zoning is able to address competing issues, and they would have noticed, or hopefully would have noticed, or the neglect would have been on their part if they didn't notice the inconsistencies with access. It makes it very difficult and costly for applicants to come in having to deal with these two agencies. This would be a very different issue if it went on just across the border in Canyon County. But recognizing what it is the law, the jurisdictions are the jurisdictions, the decisions have been made. Our hands are tied, and I will be voting for the motion.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, the next item on our agenda is the Spring Rock Master Planned Community, and we'll begin with a staff presentation on this item. Ms. Wallace.
Okay, Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Mindy Wells, Development Services. Before you today, we have a decision briefing for the Spring Rock Master Plan Community. Today, we'll have a brief project overview, a discussion of master street map modifications and roadway extensions, and then a brief discussion of ACHD's review process of future preliminary plat applications for this site. The application before you is for annexation, rezone, plan unit development, and a development agreement to allow for the development of a 761-acre master planned community, Spring Rock. For reference, this site is located just north and east of the Falcon Crest Master Plan planning area, which has recently been approved by the City of Kuna. Spring Rock Master Plan Community is proposed to include a variety of land uses and is anticipated to be built out in several phases over the next 20 years with an anticipated completion date of 2040. For the current application, ACHD is a commenting agency to the City of Kuna. The site has frontage on 10 Mile Creek Road here along the north, 5 Mile Road to the west, and Hubbard Road on the north, all classified as minor arterial roadways. At build out of the site, it's anticipated to include a mix of multifamily and single-family housing, totaling 2,297 total residential units, 83,000 square feet of commercial and office uses, and 1 elementary school. At build out in 2040, the site's anticipated to generate over 26,000 vehicle trips per day, with over 2,500 of those occurring during the PM peak hour. Due to the proposed changes in land uses for the Spring Rock Master Plan planning area, staff has recommended modifications to the master street map to change arterial roadway typologies from rural to residential. And then based on some information provided in the traffic impact study, staff has also recommended that one roadway segment, 5 Mile Road between 10 Mile Creek and Hubbard Road, be modified from a 3-lane residential arterial to a 5-lane residential arterial to accommodate site-generated traffic at build-out of the development. Staff has also recommended that the extensions of Maple Grove Road and Cole Road be incorporated into future phases of the development as they're currently shown on the master street map. I do want to talk a little bit about ACHD's review process for this type of development application and our review processes moving forward. So for the review of the master plan application in CUNA, it's very similar to a planned community in Ada County or the specific area plan in Boise City, where we have a guiding document and then we have a series of preliminary plats that comply with the guiding document. The staff report before you today is the guiding document. It's a high-level analysis highlighting area roadway improvements planned in the current capital improvements plan, potential deficiencies in ACHD's roadway network at build-out of the master plan, and sets requirements for future traffic impact studies. This report does not include the type of details that you're used to seeing in a staff report and does not include site-specific conditions of approval. As part of ACHD's review of future traffic impact studies and preliminary plats, you will likely see requirements for the construction of off-site intersections or roadway segments, the construction of turn lanes and standard roadway improvements, including the dedication of right-of-way and the construction of curb gutter and sidewalk. These requirements will be documented in a detailed staff report with site-specific conditions of approval for each future preliminary plat. A traffic impact study was prepared for the current application, and roadways and intersections included as part of that study are shown on the map for you. They're highlighted in the green and red. The traffic impact study also identified roadway segments that would need to be improved in the future. The timing and the improvements will be determined as part of ACHD's review of future traffic impact studies and preliminary plat applications. As previously mentioned, for the current application, ACHD is a commenting or recommending body to the city of CUNA, and we will review and provide a detailed analysis for each future preliminary plat application. Staff's had no public inquiries regarding this application, and the applicant and staff are in agreement for all the findings presented in the staff report. With that, staff recommends approval of the staff report as written, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Are there questions?
Madam President, I'll have some at a little bit in the future here.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Goldthorpe. All right, we'll now hear from the applicant. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Dave Jorgensen. Address is 14254 West Battenberg Drive, Boise, Idaho.
Oh, and I do need to disclose that Mr. Jorgensen did call me a few days ago with some questions and concerns about how things get on the agenda and whether or not this might be moved from the agenda. We did not, however, talk about the substance of the project in that call.
President, I'll echo what you said.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. We've spent quite a bit of effort getting to this point. We've worked with your staff, we've worked with CUNA staff as well, and we've had neighborhood meetings, and we've had lots of discussions getting to this point, which we're really quite excited about this application. As staff had mentioned, we are in full agreement of the staff report has been presented to you. This site is, I don't want to go into all the details, but we've gone through the process as requested by ACHD staff to identify the scoping of the area, where it's important to identify not just the intersections close, but also further away, given to the size and scale of the project. We could have brought forward numerous, maybe even dozens of smaller plat applications to you, which have been 100 lots or less, no traffic impact study required, and sneak under the radar with no impact requirements, and frankly, not even a requirement to build much of the road improvements being discussed here. That's not the approach we've taken. We've chosen to do a master plan community where we can be in full disclosure, talk about the multi-phase approach to this development, which we will be paying not only our share, we believe, in addition to our proportionate share of the project, because of the impact fees and the other off-site costs, which we will be, and we have agreed to pay. We went through a process where, again, the scoping was identified by ACHD, Compass, and ITD to identify the scope of the traffic impact study both for master plan as well as for each separate preliminary plat of the project, which we'll go through. ITD granted approval of the traffic impact study within a couple of weeks, but due to the nature of the very thorough detailed analysis by your staff, it was about 4 months of analysis review until it was approximately around the middle of October when ACHD accepted the approval of the traffic impact study. We filed application for land use to the city of Kuna. We are adjacent to the city of Kuna limits, and they're as identified through the master plan community of Falcon Crest. We filed our application on July 26th. Kuna City set a tentative hearing date in October 8th, but due to the timing and the additional, which we're supportive of, the time to make sure a thorough analysis of the traffic impacts was done. The hearing has been extended from October 8th to I think it was October 22nd and November 12th again, thinking that might be the date, but then that's been passed. And so now the hearing date has been pushed on further into January after some decisions here. We recognize that this is a commenting agency. We also recognize we're providing quite a few positives to ACHD through this master plan community effort. Not only through the effort of the impact fees, which we paid, but as I mentioned, the offsite costs, which we will be paying for as well. Now, one thing I will also kind of conclude with this comment and make myself stand for any questions you may have for us. Specifically, as I've observed over the many years of working with ACHD and watching development occur in high growth areas, now frankly the whole Ada County I would deem as high growth area, is one of the challenges is not preserving adequate right-of-way. And then ACHD has to come back later to acquire that right-of-way at a cost to the taxpayers. That's not what we are doing. We are preserving all the adequate right-of-way necessary at full build-out. Secondly is bike lanes. We recognize that 10 Mile Creek Road has quite a few cyclists on it. There's also quite a few gravel trucks on 10 Mile Creek Road. And so we will be widening 10 Mile Creek to not only accommodate the trucks and vehicles that travel at full build out, but also bike lanes and also pedestrian pathway. So it's safe routes for pedestrians, bikes, and for cars in this area. And lastly, there's even been some discussion about having a park and ride or some kind of a node in that area. And that is, if that's something that Valley Ride Transit or ACHD wants us to do, we will agree to do that because we're, again, providing a commitment to be a community partner in this area. Commissioners, we thank you for your time. We're very excited about this project. I'll keep my comments focused to transportation, as that's what this is here today. But we're happy to answer any questions you have about our development and stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions?
Sure.
Commissioner
I have
Goldthorpe.
probably several, but I'd be interested in knowing why you were concerned that I asked that this be heard in the regular agenda.
Commissioner Arnold, Madam Chairman, and Commissioner Arnold, Commissioner Goldthorpe, it's a cost to us, frankly. As we've gone through this entire process, working through with the neighbors. In fact, when we had our neighbor meeting, we didn't reach out just to the limited number of required distribution, but actually we've reached out to more than double the distance to have adequate notification to the surrounding neighborhood for our neighborhood meeting. And so the delay is actually expensive to us, Commissioner Goldthorpe, frankly. It costs us about $90,000 when we look at our interest carry plus the additional earnest money costs we have to pay on a monthly basis. So these delays are expensive to us, and we'd rather put that money into infrastructure than just interest. So that's the reasoning. We haven't had any outside complaints. In fact, frankly, we've heard mostly support for our project. So that's why.
That's interesting. Time is of the essence, it sounds like. Do you think that possibly it could be of the essence or to a benefit to a board such as this to have a little longer than 4 days to digest everything that we've had given us?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I don't set the timing when staff reports are presented, and I don't set the timing as to
That's why just a little thought on your part. That's all we've had. That was the only reason that I asked for this to come off the consent agenda, because we still, in my opinion, haven't had enough time to digest anything relative to giving comments. I've been called by a number of people asking me why have become so development adverse, anti-business, anti-growth, when nothing could be further from the truth. What I am is pro-courtesy, and I'm not saying that you haven't been courteous, but the fact that we haven't been given any time here, especially the dim bulb on the tree here, me, a retired insurance agent, to give due and thorough consideration to this, even request for comments, is not a good thing, in my opinion. That's why I asked. And we'll have a couple more opportunities to make some suggestions here as we go on, but I wanted to clear that up right off the bat.
Madam President, if I could address that. Commissioner Goldthorpe, I appreciate your comments. We've been very thorough with your staff. We spent, as I identified, I could give you the dates, don't need to debate it, 4 or more months of working with your staff to make sure there's a very thorough analysis of not only our site, but the surrounding intersections and road sections. I believe there's over 14 road sections and intersections were identified with this traffic study, which is pretty substantial. And so I want to compliment your staff for requiring this applicant to make sure that our review is thorough and complete. I'm sorry, I don't decide how quickly you get your staff reports, but I do know that we're trying to follow through the process that's been outlined for us.
And I'm not saying there was anything wrong, anything illegal, anything improper about anything that you gave us. My thoughts and my only concerns are not for the east-west stretch of this development, but for the north-south, from Pleasant Valley Road all the way to Cloverdale, which the only comments we have given or addressed have been to copy and paste elements of the CIP, which isn't necessarily what I would consider a comment to another agency who has the full capability of accessing all this publicly available information and probably has already many times.
Thank you.
All right, are there further questions?
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Jorgensen. So you spoke to different neighborhoods, and you said it went beyond, but the neighborhoods that will be sharing these arterials, that currently are putting traffic on, and we frankly receive complaints that they face congestion. So were some of those the neighborhoods you spoke with, or what were the extent of those those would be the neighborhoods sharing 5 Mile?
Madam President, Commissioner
Over
Hanson,
there.
there's a list as we worked with City staff, which they provided to us. I don't have that list right in front of me, but I do know that it was an outreach of a few of the neighborhood associations as well as the neighbors. And I know that the legal requirement is at 300 feet. We went way beyond 300 feet for the notice. And we had a meeting on site. It was back in June. And more than half of the invitations of those invited actually attended. It wasn't just a super small 5 people showed up. It was more than that. And so with that in mind, we don't decide. We let the agency, land use agency, give us some direction there. I might also further comment. I appreciate the analysis that's given not only by the traffic engineer, but also by your staff in the staff report. Staff has said again here today, this is a guiding document, which also references these 14 intersections, of which are 5 Mile and Cloverdale and Pleasant Valley, of which you've identified. Now that's north-south. You can go east-west, Hubbard and others, Columbia too, Lake Hazel. Those are all studied, of which we will probably have some off-site requirements on our part to pay for those intersection widenings or new lights or road lane widenings, whatever the case may be, as we get to that phase of the development. Not the very first house, of course, but maybe it's the 100th house or the 500th house or whatever the case may be. We will have some off-site requirements of which is identified in this report in which we support.
Yeah. Do you anticipate any or of the internal roads to be private roads? Will they all be public? Do you have an anticipated percentage? I know in areas A and B you have more detail, so those obviously will inform whether the other areas will. So what are your anticipated new lane miles of public and private percentage-wise?
Thanks for the question. It's all public, except for in the areas of the commercial where you can see the primary commercial areas just north of the green blob in the middle is the community park that we're building. That's almost 40 acres, over 35 acres in size. And that northern section of it where the red is, not the purple's a school site, but the reddish area is where the commercial, that would be some private area for drive lanes between the commercial buildings. But outside of that, for the primary, the residential area, that would be public.
What is your estimate in the number of lane miles of new public roads that would the taxpayers?
Sorry, Commissioner Hanson, I know our engineer provided that in our report to the staff, but I don't have that memorized. It's a couple miles. I mean, it's more than a mile. You're right. There's several miles of that. That's correct.
Great. All right. Thanks, and I appreciate your comment that you like to let the land use agencies give you the direction that you need. I would agree with that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And they asked for us to reach out further than what Falcon Crest did, which we did. We reached out to a distance further than what Falcon Crest did.
All right, any further questions? No? All right. No one has signed up to address this item, but if there's anyone who would like to address the commission, you're welcome to come up. right, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Marissa Keith. I'm at 3279 South Cloverdale Road. I'm the president of the Southwest Ada County Alliance Neighborhood Association, and we're registered with Ada County and the city of Boise, not CUNA. But our boundaries do go out to Columbia Road, and probably because we are not with the city of CUNA, we were not notified of this development. Didn't know about it, so I read about it in the newspaper, unfortunately. But of course, this large of a development will definitely have an effect on SWACA as well as the South Cole neighborhoods, because these people are likely going to be driving into Boise and not into CUNA for their daily activities. So I just had a couple of comments, mostly about the process. I was excited when I came out of the pre-session and saw all these people here, and then a little bit disappointed when they all left, because I was really hoping that they were here to comment about this issue. But I guess most people don't know about it, and they can't plan to be here with very little notice when they have work and things like that. So I would encourage the commission to perhaps defer this decision or this recommendation to a night meetings in the hopes that some of other people might be able to show up. So last night I was at Boise City Council, and we were very much talking about land use versus ACHD. And what struck me is there was an issue before the SWACA agenda item where the fire department actually recommended a no on a development in the foothills that I think Commissioner Baker had discussed way back when she was on the planning and zoning there. But I'm sorry, on the city council. So it was interesting, because then when we get up there and talk about our issues and the staff report comes up and they read that that line where it says ACHD, you know, basically is recommending approval of this. It really ties the land agencies, this is what we're hearing, it ties their hand, because they rely on recommendations from the experts. And when the experts are saying, we have no concerns with this application, or we recommend approval of this, they're like, well, what can we do? We're not ACHD. So I would really encourage you to perhaps, when you send your comments into CUNA, to not just say, we don't have any problems with this, because these roads were not in your plan to widen. We all know that there are budget issues, severe budget issues in the future, you know, even closer into the city, even within city limits. And for this type of development to go way out here, out from any sort of infrastructure, and really outside the plan that CUNA had submitted to you guys way back when, is really not very smart planning and smart growth. So that's what I wanted to say. I think that's all. Thank you.
All right, are there questions? No? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address this item? Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Deanna Smith, 910 Main Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I also am not really prepared to comment on this. I just learned about it Monday, and so I can't speak specifically, but I would echo many of Marissa's concerns and would concur with Commissioner Goldthorpe that this is huge. This is almost as large as Harris Ranch. And I went through all of Harris Ranch, both 1 and 2, and the extensive processes, not just involving the public, but all the various entities and agencies. I can't speak to, without looking at this more deeply, whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. I do really challenge the term that this is a planned community. It's a master plan. Those are very different. It's unclear how much commercial will be there. You see before you a little bit today, that amount of commercial and a potential future school site, if and when the rooftops come, really is not a planned community. There would be very little trip capture in that planned community. And as such, it's a very large subdivision, and I do think that there's a lot of questions that should be asked and answered regarding adequate public facilities, including your roadways, As Marissa pointed out, these are not currently on your plans, our long-range vision plans. So I just would urge you to proceed cautiously with your, whatever comments you put on the record today, to give yourself the opportunity down the road as this moves forward and you learn more, to be able to change your mind if you conclude that in fact this is too soon for this part of our county. Thank you.
Are there questions or comments? No? All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to discuss this item? No? Okay, I'll give the applicant the opportunity to come back and make any further comments you'd like.
Thank you, Madam President. For the record, Dave Jorgensen. And I'll just maybe respond to a couple things. I heard a comment, this is outside of the plan. Actually, Kuna City adopted a new comp plan this year, first of the year. And this complies. They want mixed use for this area. And this is what we're proposing. That's why we spent so much time working with staff at Kuna to identify that. We also recognize, and I appreciate the comments from Ms. Smith regarding trip capture. That's why the analysis was so thorough with the staff to make sure that we got the numbers right. And the ACHD staff does agree with our number. I believe it's 12% is the proposed trip capture. However, the flexibility is built into this approval. Your staff report says that we need to have follow-up traffic impact studies. This won't be the first bite at the apple. You'll have a chance to review it and say, oh, look, this trip disbursement is different. It's not all going 70% west, it's maybe only going 50% west, and the rest is going east. Therefore, more traffic mitigation will be required on this development. And we agree to that. Those flexibilities are already baked into and written into this staff report. So with that in mind, we appreciate the comments, but we also recognize the heavy lift and analysis has been done by the traffic engineers and by the staff here at ACHD. We appreciate your time. I appreciate your questions. And but we do ask for your approval today so we can move forward with the land use agency and keep this project moving forward. Stand for any questions.
All right, are there further questions?
Just one follow-up question. I noticed the Compass Development Review was attached to the memo. Do you have any comments on that? Do you think we should consider that? Or should we defer that consideration for some future more detail? It is required to have that development review placed in front of us because the Communities in Motion is the regional transportation plan that we tell the taxpayers and the federal government that when they give us money that we will follow. And it says under this that it exceeds what that plan is.
So, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, I would add a couple of things. One is unfortunate, but though I recognize the plan that you try to follow, it's not always accurate. For example, there's a new fire station being built in the very near future that's not more than 4 miles away, though this report says that. So unfortunately, I think there's some, I don't want to call it wrong information, just based on old information that this letter is written on. If you want to include it, that's certainly your prerogative. I don't want to say it's all false and all inaccurate. But that's why we're working very closely with the Land Use Agency of City of Kuna to make sure that we're following their new comprehensive plan and their new plans for these adequate public facilities have been referenced today.
All right, further questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks again.
Do we have anything further from staff? Oh, all right.
I have a question for Steve.
Okay. Mr. Price, would you come up? Commissioner Goldthorpe has a question for you.
Morning or afternoon. Afternoon. I just would like to know one thing, and that is if anything in this process that we are involved in today, in any way, shape, or form, could be construed to creating the entitlement going forward for this development, or if being a commenting agent on this application only does nothing to influence that.
Madam President, for the record, Steve Price, ACHD General Counsel. Commissioner Goldthorpe, as part of the application process for a master plan, this the plan goes out to a number of different agencies to provide comment. And ACHD is one of those. And it's a requirement that within that application process that this be done. The entitlement for ACHD is when the preliminary plats come by and were reviewed. As a recommending body, I suppose that the completion of the process is moving towards a full entitlement. But I don't believe that a developer can go out tomorrow and start building. He still has to meet other additional application requirements.
Is there anything that would prohibit us from making more specific comments than the cut and paste that we have with regards to the CIP information, but instead to make sure that the city of Kuna understands the impacts going forward in the next 20 years that we are not prepared to meet?
Well, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, that's within the purview of the commission. I believe that there's sufficient information that's been provided to the district for our staff to make adequate comment on the scope of the development and how it meets ACHD policy. So for that reason, I think that the district has received sufficient information to provide comment. If the commission wills to provide greater comment and take a closer look at this and provide more of a input to the city, that's within the prerogative of the commission. But as it stands, staff believes that the application as presented is sufficient and can move forward.
Thank you, because my only concern is that at some time in the future, we will be bound to hear, whether it's this particular application or development or any of 1,000 others, that, hey, this is all ACHD said about this back on this date. And that will be the only thing that anybody would rightly have to go with from that point on. So I just don't give everybody credit for looking back and understanding what the possible impacts are for ACHD's finances and otherwise to make just blanket approvals or blanket denials or anything else, but just need some more information included in the comments besides what we did, which is just providing public information. And you don't have to reply to that. That's just more of my own thoughts.
I understand.
Madam President?
Yes.
I do just, this is going to be a long process. It's a large development. This applicant is known for putting a lot of thought into the developments that they do in their outreach. I think they need to be commended on going beyond that perimeter. I want to commend our staff. I think they did a lot of exhaustive work here, and I commend the collaborative effort and working relationship that you've had with the applicant. As the applicant stated, this is just the first bite of the apple. This is going to be a long process. They're going to have to come back to us through the different stages. Is that correct, Mr. Price, as we go forward?
Yes.
So today, the approval of this just merely gets the process started. And so I would be in favor of making a motion for approval to go forward based on those comments.
Any further questions before that? Oh, okay. I would just ask that if you are going to make a motion to approve the staff report, that it be clear in the motion that we are not approving the master plan, we're not approving a rezone, we're not approving annexation, because those are not within our purview. Those approvals will come from the land use agency. All we're approving today is a staff report to provide comment to the land use agency.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. So going forward, I would like to make a motion to approve the requests before us here with Spring Rock Master Plan Community, approval of the staff report. As stated, we're not a land use agency, so we are not approving what I'll do, the annexation, the rezoning. Was there a third thing?
Well,
Just
we're
the
not really
rezoning
approving the
and-
master plan, we're just providing
Right,
comments.
Right. So with that, I would make the motion for approval.
Madam President, I would ask the maker of the motion to include one other aspect, and that is that there be an additional comment placed in the staff report that, based on current budgets and current forecasts financially, it is unlikely that we would be able to complete the necessary mitigations to the north-south corridors during this time frame.
Yeah.
Realistically,
We don't know. We don't have that crystal ball.
we could put that in just as a codicil that just says, you know, this is what might happen.
That's all I want, because understanding the way we're dealt with from everywhere from the legislature on down, and knowing that our revenues are going down every year, even with the growth. That's the only thing that I want the land use agencies to really understand.
Okay.
So I'll second that with that.
All right.
With that change.
And you're okay with that
And then I
addition?
have a comment.
Okay, Commissioner
Okay,
Baker?
So, I want to thank the applicant for coming and also for those who testified. This is we are having a lot of growth in this county. I mean, it is without a doubt something that the land use agencies have to deal with. And from our standpoint, when we comment, we're not saying go ahead and build it. We're saying if it's built, this is what has to happen. Okay, so there's a big distinction there. Everything that happens in terms of the land use is done by the cities or the county, and if they don't want to see this happen, they vote no. That's what they have to do. However, you know, and they say, there's that saying, if you build it, they will come. But I think we're at the point where they're coming, so we have to start building. Because otherwise we end up with situations where people cannot afford even apartments anymore because the housing stock is so tight. I've heard a number of times this year in little seminars and stuff that we are 25,000 units short of what is needed to serve the demand that's, and I don't know if that's the demand that's here now or if that's the demand that's coming. Either way, we're 25,000 units short. So this is the type of project, I would consider this, no offense, to be way the hell and gone, but apparently it's not anymore. And hopefully someday CUNA will develop some industries down there that will allow for people to be able to buy these houses or apartments or rent apartments or whatever's down here. But as has been pointed out by a number of different commenters so far, this is a master plan. It is not a detailed plan. We will be looking at it in depth in the future. And again, the city of CUNA doesn't want to see this happen. The city of CUNA can say no, but if the city of CUNA says yes, then our comments go towards, okay, this is how you make it work.
All right, are there further comments?
Madam President, I would make a motion that we defer this until the city of CUNA has taken action on this. City P&Z and the city council.
All right, there's been a substitute motion. Is there a second for that motion?
Yes, I would second that.
All right, do we have comments on that motion?
Yes, just simply, it's very clear that the city P&Z and city council was slated, in fact, to take action on this before it coming to the ACHD. Their dates were moved last fall, presumably. There's no obligation under law that the ACHD commission take action. There's lots of information that our staff might be able to provide to their staff as they're making that determination, but there's no obligation under law that this commission take an action. We heard from the previous issue before us that when we do take action, that is interpreted, whether we want it or not, as the transportation issues have already been dealt with by the ACHD. The goodwill of the developer notwithstanding, there are many issues that are raised with moving forward as an official act of this commission to say we give the green light to move forward with comments before the entity, the general purpose government, which has the authority to determine growth, makes a decision, because we bear the consequences of the taxpayers paying for that growth. And the city must deal with the consequences. Yes, we need more housing in this county, but the taxpayers of this county are not obligated to pay for the infrastructure costs of putting the housing wherever. So I think it's appropriate. It's totally appropriate, and I've made this point with previous, that this commission can deal with this after the city planning and zoning and the city council have dealt with it. We've seen in too many cases where we've taken action, and in fact the city and the P&Z impose additional or different requirements, and it goes in a different direction. I think the place of first impression, the first determination by an elected body, has to be in the general purpose government on something of a consequence of this, such a huge consequence. So that's why I would ask that this be deferred until after the P&Z and the city of Kuna have taken action.
Madam President?
Yes, Commissioner
I'm not
Baker.
going to support the motion. Maybe there's a law that says we should go first besides them, but that is the practice. That is the practice that everyone does. If we say we're going to wait until the city takes action, the city's going to say, well, we need your input, and then it becomes a big thing. And I think you are misreading, Mr. Hansen, what happened in the previous action item that we had today. We had already decided back in April the disposition of that road, and we heard the same arguments in April that we heard today. The applicant or the Franklin Sensors today was just trying to get another bite at the apple to change something that had already been decided and discussed thoroughly back in April. So, I think that is a totally separate issue and has nothing to do with this.
Further comment on the substitute motion? I will not be supporting the substitute motion. While I understand the concern that Commissioner Hansen has raised, I do think it is a better course of action for us to provide some input and comments to the city of Kuna so that they're making an informed decision when they do take action on this. So I will not be supporting the substitute motion.
And Madam President, I will not be supporting the substitute motion either, for the reasons stated by both you and Commissioner Baker.
All right. Any further comment? All right, we'll vote on the substitute motion first. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, sorry, never mind.
All those opposed, please say no.
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 No. So the motion fails 3-2. So do we have any further comment on the original motion? Yes, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I seconded the second motion, the substitute motion, because I thought that'd be the right process, but will be fully in favor of the primary motion as was made and modified down the line here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment on the original motion?
Yeah, Madam President, I'll be opposing the motion as there is insufficient information for me to make comment on what we are expected. The staff has provided some good comment, could provide that directly to the staff of the city, but I have been provided insufficient information, especially with the questions raised by the development review, in order to pass on that, to make that recommendation. And that's what we're being asked to do, to make a recommendation. And I think it would be beyond my fiduciary duty to say I would recommend moving forward on this.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the original motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the original motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes on a 4-1 vote. All right, that's the end of our regular agenda with the exception of public communications. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission today in public communications? Yes, please come up. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record, even though we all know you.
Thank you, President Arnold, members of the board. Hi, my name is Mitra Mehta Cooper, 200 West Front Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I am the strategic planning manager for Ada County, and I want to thank the board for engaging in the 5-year update of your capital improvement plan and impact fees, and inviting the participation on the CICAC from Ada County. So thank you for allowing us a seat on CICAC as you are reviewing the 5-year update. Ms. President, as you have heard in the past from Ada County Board, we are very much interested in understanding the fiscal realities of growth and our land use decisions, something that you have grappled in today's agenda as I witnessed all the other items. And I think it is very critical that as county agencies, we are looking at it in a very comprehensive manner. And so as I was invited to sit on the Citizens Advisory Committee that is looking at the capital improvement plan, one of my very first requests was to look at service area-based impact fee. And interestingly enough, that discussion had occurred in the past. And so we had requested that information from the staff from the beginning of this process, and we haven't seen that information yet. So I know that you have a work session after this item, and I would hope that you would support Ada County and our staff, as well as CICAC, in receiving that information so that we can make more informed recommendations to you on the capital improvement plan. I really hope that you will support our request today, because we are requesting this information and have not yet received it. With that, I'm here for any questions that you may have, but we would like to see some additional technical analysis and the qualitative discussion that had taken place in the past over this issue so that we can understand the rationale for going with a countywide fee so that we can make an informed choice.
Okay. Are there questions, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Was there some, I don't recall a deadline that was, that there was for us to get the information back to you. Do you know what that might have been?
No, but we have requested in the past at the CICAC meeting that we be provided that information, so we feel comfortable in our recommendations to you. So I think at this point in time, I would like to request that we receive that information so that we can give you a more informed recommendation.
Okay, further questions?
Madam President, we discussed it as a commission a number of years ago and came to the conclusion, we used to have it done by districts. And then we came to the conclusion that it just wasn't working for either us or the county. So we went with a countywide, because oftentimes the areas provide such minuscule amounts of money because they're pretty much completely developed. Whereas, you know, you had Meridian and Cuna and Star in the western part of the counties. And that's why we did it, because that then allowed us to do the projects in the most appropriate way possible and the most financially appropriate way possible. So I don't see me changing that in the future. I don't see wanting any, I really don't want staff to come to me and try to tell me that I made a wrong decision, because we did make this decision after a lot of discussion. I don't even know what year that was, but it's worked very well for us since, and allows us to do our duty in terms of building out the roads the way we feel is most appropriate. So that's, I guess, that might be the answer to you, and I don't see any reason for us to change, so.
Well, I might remind you that we don't take any action during public communications, and there will be additional opportunities for you to provide input
I understand
into
that.
the capital improvements plan.
If I may, Madam President,
Sure.
the only thing that we were requesting is just that documentation that you have seen in the past. Some of us are, as you know, fairly new to this process. I've only been here in this region for last 3 years, so I haven't seen that documentation. And all we are requesting is what you have seen and how you arrived at that decision is that information is what we have requested. And we would appreciate it if you can support our request in that.
Thank you. I'd just like to commend the county for doing a pretty intensive data collection process to do the fiscal analysis. That's so important because we're obligating our taxpayers to pay for that infrastructure, and that data is so important. It's often easier not to have that data. My impression was that the data you're asking about the impacts, particularly of housing and different housing typologies, those in dense areas versus those single family out in less dense areas, we don't collect, but instead we take the position that the developer must come to us, and if they want something different, they have to collect that data and present it to us. Now, presumably, we have information from some developers who've given us information to try and get to a different fee, and others who haven't, but the onus isn't on the agency. That's the position we're taking currently. The onus is on the private entity that does or doesn't want to pay that particular impact fee they want, and they then do their own data collection, presumably at their own cost. And so I think that's what you're getting at, is what we may have or what we may obligate the agency to collect in terms of data, especially around housing typologies. Is that correct?
Madam President, Mr. Hanson, that is correct. You know, one of the very basic question that we are asking ourselves is land uses and where they are going in terms of its location, and what it does in terms of our service provision needs, and what are the ways that we can guide that growth in the right area where the service provision is existing available, or there is some capacity when it comes to roads existing available. So, you know, that's where really our understanding needs to develop as a region, and we feel that, you know, this is an important piece in that puzzle to kind of get a better feel of where the growth is occurring and how the land use decisions are impacting in a more proactive manner rather than in a reactive manner, as you described when application is made. We react to the TIS that is done, or we react to the application in front of us. How are we doing it on cumulative basis as county? And that's really what our desire is to understand going forward. And so this request was part of that, and we would hope that you would ask your staff to provide that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for being here today. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission? Come on down. State your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam President. Karen Gallagher, City of Boise, 150 North Capitol. So we've had, following up on the same topic that Mitchell just brought up, noticing that on your post agenda is the 2020 Capital Improvements Plan status update, and the topics that you're looking at for the scope for the Capital Improvement Committee to look at. I guess backing up one step, in presentations that we've had from ACHD over the last year is a concern about finances and at a crossroads, and some of what's been discussed is that impact fees could be a solution to some of those monetary concerns. So at your budget approval back on August 21st, the motion by Commissioner Baker included, I think, at least 6 different items, of which the 6th one was asking your staff to come back to look at state law and everything that could be included in the impact fees for that discussion. We've had 3 CICAC meetings, and we're hoping for that information too. So one, in your discussion today, we're hoping to see where your request to your staff is on those eligible items. Looking at the CICAC bylaws, where the committee is to recommend modifications to the impact fee methodologies, service area boundaries, and our impact fee formulas, as well as, I mean, we're a partner in trying to come to solutions to the growth that's happening. We've got land use assumptions in the bylaws as well, and the concern that the commission has on just the finances and impact fees and general funds and how all of that ties together. So we're hoping to get that information and look at the service fees as well. I'm sorry, service areas. Thank you.
All right, questions, comments? No? Okay. Director Wong, did you have a comment?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to make sure the commission understood that those were presented to the CACC on Monday. I'm sorry that the representative there was not available to hear those. They were also presented to the Commercial Developers Advisory Committee, other committees, as they will be presented to you. Again, this is an information only, but all those comments and questions have been presented to the CAC.
Okay.
I was there. Thank you.
All right, we would invite you to attend and listen in on our work session too, if you'd like.
Thank you. I'll be there.
Thank you very much. Is there
Madam
any?
President, may I make a request that we continue the work session in this room? That way we can continue the live stream and the discussion much as we've started it, rather than break up, go into the back room. So I'd ask a unanimous consent or a request that we continue the work session here after we've adjourned the formal meeting.
Well, do we have any comments on that?
I have no problem meeting with, wherever is the most comfortable and accomplishes the most as far as the purpose of the work session.
Since it is an informational item and we're not making any decisions, I think it's fine if we adjourn to the pre-commission room. So that's what we'll do. Meeting adjourned.